We recognize that the Hogan Administrative Center occupies the land of the Ho-Chunk people. Please take a moment to celebrate and honor this ancestral Ho-Chunk land and the lands of all indigenous peoples. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Feldman?
Excused, I'm sorry.
Ms. Bergdahl? Here. Dr. Cooper-Stoll? Here. Dr. Garcia? Here. Dr. Jimenez?
Excused.
Ms. Leahy? Here. Ms. Moots? Here. Mr. Korberg?
Here.
Mr. Spivey?
Absent. A quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of February 6, 2023 is called to order. We will now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's agenda has previously been distributed to the board. I would entertain a motion at this time with a second to approve the agenda as submitted, unless there's a motion to amend.
Make a motion to approve as submitted. A second.
With a motion by Dr. Cooper-Stoll and a second by Dr. Garcia. The agenda has been, there's been a motion to approve it. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All abstain? All nay? The motion carries. I don't think we have a public speaker tonight, so we'll move on to the superintendent's consent agenda.
I will make a motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda as presented. Second.
The consent agenda is a mechanism used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. Are there any items that members want to remove from the consent agenda? With a motion by Dr. Cooper-Stoll and seconded by Ms. Bergdahl, the items on the superintendent's consent agenda are approved as presented. Next is the board consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented. Second.
With a motion by Dr. Cooper-Stoll and a second by Dr. Garcia, the items on the board consent agenda are approved as presented. Moving on to the information portion of our meeting, we have first up is the results monitoring report R3.3 involved citizenship.
Dr. Lahucky is here to present on our results monitoring tonight. Just as a reminder, it's a process we use to indicate to the board that we're meeting their expectations as outlined in policy. Dr. Lahucky.
Good evening. Tonight we have 4 indicators for demonstrate effective communication skills, which is results policy 3.3. The first 2 use new language that was recently approved by the board, in that it's greater than the state average or demonstrate reasonable growth or achievement, to help kind of clarify that conversation that we have as far as meeting reasonable progress. 3 of the indicators have been marked as making reasonable progress. 1 is not applicable, and I'll explain when we get to 3.4 why that's the case. So first, looking at the Wisconsin Forward exam that's given in grades 3 through 8, the data that I have here, writing exam data. So our students in the spring, when they take the Wisconsin Forward, part of the ELA assessment has a writing component at the end. I use the term writing, but actually it's keyboarding. It is a digitally entered information to a writing prompt. So students will get a writing prompt, they'll write about it. And that result is then measured by the state, and then we get the results of the students that are proficient in advance. What makes this one interesting, I think, is we actually had 2 years where we did not have writing data. So in 2021, the spring of 2021, we did have the Wisconsin Forward exam, but they dropped the writing component for that 1 year. So now we're back to having the writing exam as well. So that's why you see that 2-year gap, where generally when we present the pandemic data, there's just that 1 year. For writing for the Wisconsin Forward, there's 2. You can go back to 2019. That was our last pre-pandemic year, and now we have a recalibrated number, which for grades 3 through 8, the aggregate was a 34% of our students are at proficient and advanced. The state is at 38%. What we've learned over the last few years, even without the exam, we've done some data analysis to determine what standards are most often the ones that are asked about on the Wisconsin Forward. We have some prompts that we use with our students as just part of the regular instruction to help students be more prepared for that. Another discussion point is, when do you do keyboarding, right? So depending on what state you're at, sometimes it's dictated to you. Some states start as early as kindergarten. For us, it's that 2nd, 3rd grade area where we start our keyboarding skills and then ready for the spring 3rd grade. Cursive is another discussion as well. Where does that cursive instruction fall? That 2nd, 3rd grade seems to be the sweet spot around the nation and also our state. If you look specifically at the different grade levels, you can see at the state level and also here, 8th grade tends to be where we see the biggest drop-off of scores. That's something we are looking pretty closely at to see what's happening at our middle school that we can improve going forward. The results are broken down by the different reference groups, and you can see our improvement or performance pre-pandemic compared to this last year. And we're actually right in the midst of planning for the upcoming spring assessment, which will be this March and April for the Wisconsin Forward. Do you have any questions regarding indicator 1? Okay. For indicator 2, this is our ACT writing. So once again, we're measuring communication in the form of writing for indicator 2. ACT has a writing component for it. And unlike the Forward, we've actually haven't had a break in our data due to the pandemic, because right in 2020, this is taken in early March generally, and we were able to complete this assessment before we released for school for the pandemic. So we do have results before and after the pandemic, and we were able to keep that score going. This is an 11th grade exam, which is unique, I think, because it is a 1 grade indicator that you're seeing here, meaning that there will be some variance from year to year. Certain classes are stronger in writing than others, and without having that 9th and 10th grade data to really look at, it is a bit of a mystery. We're starting to close that gap with our local measures now as we assess our writing skills. So you can see last year we had a 3-point gap with the state that did move to a 5-point gap with the state. And we will see how that trends for our current 11th graders this particular year. And then we did see some variance with our subgroups, or reference groups, I should say, as well. Because the amount of growth or variance of scores was 0.2, we did deem reasonable progress. The scores were essentially flat. Are there any questions about indicator 2? Indicator 3, we use our student report card at our elementary. This one meets developmental expectations or progressing towards expectations in the area of participates in classroom discussions and activities. So you can see back to 2019, we pull the end of the 2nd quarter, basically the semester grades for this particular area, and those that are at those levels. You can see the percentages have varied amongst the years. So I will say, and you could speak to any of our teachers in the district, we do see some more dysregulation of behaviors than we have before, which accounts for this particular drop in score, 1%, grades 1 through 5 overall. So flat from year to year. It's a challenge. You can ask any of our elementary teachers as we continue to recover. Our work in social emotional learning, we believe, is going to make the payoff to get us back to those pre-pandemic where we were approaching 98, 99% of our students were participating regularly. As we move on, I may add another indicator to this or more data to this with our secondary report card. Habits of mind, we'll be able to add some data there once our teachers are more attuned at separating behaviors from learning. So we will have secondary data, I think, for indicator 3 soon.
I have a question on a couple of the measures you've talked about. Obviously, we do have the new language in here that includes the consideration for reasonable growth or achievement, which is a step in the right direction. You've mentioned a couple of times indicators being kind of flat, but you also have those checked as reasonable progress. I just wondered if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Sure. If you look nationally, what we saw from the pandemic is that students in poverty and students from minority groups tended to be adversely impacted in the pandemic compared to their peers. So being able to hold the line in our data, keeping it almost the same, to me is reasonable progress because we didn't experience the drop that many students with our demographics did.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd say too, the way I made sense of it is that the state numbers also had a similar kind of slide or flatness as ours. So we're seeing that impact not just here, but also in all over the state.
I would say, though, our state is less diverse than we are and also more affluent than we are, which is a consideration as well, as a whole. Any more questions with indicator 3? For indicator 4, we ask our world language teachers to collect some data of students that meet or exceed the benchmark based on the level of the course taken. Not applicable, and this is a victim mainly of the timing. This is one of the measures that we move to different times of the year. We receive this information at the end of the year. All of our language courses are a year in length. They'll take the proficiency test at the end of the year, and then we'll be able to report that out. So next February, I'll have this data for the previous year. So I do not have any tonight, but will going forward.
Any other questions for Mr. Locke? Okay, thank you. Next up is the Operational Expectations Monitoring Report, OE3, for the treatment of community stakeholders.
Thank you, Mr. Korberg. So OE3 monitors treatment of community stakeholders. The superintendent shall ensure that the district at all levels treats community stakeholders with respect, dignity, and courtesy. There are 6 indicators for this operational expectation. I'll jump down to OE 3.1. There is no unauthorized release of confidential information in the district as evidenced by the lack of complaints resulting from such a release. We've got a compliance documentation letter there that indicates that that was the case for the last year. Indicator 2, there's no grievance or legal action taken against the district for unauthorized release of confidential information. I have another compliance documentation letter that indicates that that was also the case for the last year. And indicator 3 is no documented breaches resulting in an outside entity gaining unauthorized access to district data. Once again, a compliance documentation letter indicating that that was the case for the last year. OE 3.2, the superintendent will effectively handle complaints. The first indicator is the formal complaint process is made available to the public and communicated to complainants when a formal complaint is made. There's evidence there indicating that we have a policy on public requests, suggestions, and complaints posted on the school district website, and that as students, families, and staff access our Code of Rights and Responsibilities, it also includes our non-discrimination complaint form, and that information is posted on our website. Additionally, there's many other policies that provide an avenue for complaint or appeal, and those are listed there. Indicator 2 indicates 100% of formal written complaints filed are investigated and resolved according to the school district complaint policy in a fair and timely manner. We did receive one complaint filed recently, and this complaint is still within the investigation timeline and is in the process of being resolved. OE 3.3, the superintendent will respect and value individual differences of opinion. Indicator 1, the district provides multiple means for stakeholders or representative stakeholders to express their individual thoughts and ideas and give feedback and input into the district, into the direction of the district. Attached is a compliance documentation letter, which identifies a range of ways that community stakeholders have been able to express their individual thoughts and ideas and give feedback on the direction of the school district. They include some general opportunities as well as specific district opportunities, some related to various departments and directorates in our school district, as well as specific meetings with the superintendent. And then I have included our referendum informational sessions, and of course the ultimate input by our community was through voting at our last election.
I have a question just about the compliance documentation letter, just for my own clarification. On the list of, there are many examples of the community meetings that you attend. Since there aren't dates, is it, are we to assume that you attend all of those every time, or?
The meetings of the superintendent with the community groups, yes. Those are
Okay.
meetings that I have at those times on a regular basis, yes.
Okay.
And then the meetings that are identified above are often
Just
biannually
ongoing?
or ongoing or ad hoc, or annual meetings. They're all regularly scheduled things. OE 3.4, the superintendent will reasonably include people in decisions that affect them. Indicator 1, the district meets regularly with unions that represent staff in the district. The compliance documentation letter there indicates the dates that the district met with unions and representative groups. OE, or indicator 2, buildings have leadership teams that include staff members in their buildings and use these teams to aid in making decisions. The compliance documentation letter indicates that building leadership teams are established, and then the second link there identifies the individuals on our building leadership teams in each building. Indicator 3, the district cabinet meets regularly to address district level issues. The cabinet meets twice a month for at least 2 hours to engage in district decision making. OE 3.5, indicator 1, there are no verified complaints of dishonest communication by the district staff. Evidence is the compliance documentation letter, which indicates there were no verified complaints of dishonest communication. And OE 3.6, indicator 1, there are no valid complaints against the district that it did not meet open records requests as defined by Wisconsin state law. And there's a compliance documentation letter indicating that that was the case for this last year. Any additional questions that folks have about any of the indicators listed?
I have no questions, but I have a comment. Since this is the policy on treatment of community stakeholders, I was particularly impressed during the referendum information sessions last fall with how you navigated those, and with great civility and respect and grace under fire, and I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you. We do have plans to continue outreach and engaging our community stakeholders in new ways. It's an area where you can never do enough, and so we're looking at putting together kind of a book study and an informational series over the next school year to further engage folks and help expand our community's understanding of what goes on in schools, the challenges we face, and how they can be involved. And then we'll also be extending our kind of long-range facility work over this next year as well with the convening of a facility advisory committee to help look at current and ongoing issues with our facilities. So I look forward to continuing that work and then expanding upon it to continue involving our community in the decisions that affect them.
Any other questions for Dr. Engel?
How will people for that committee be selected?
Yeah, it's a group that we want to be able to make recommendations to me and to the school board. And so it can't be too big, it has to be functional. And so we're looking at a group of somewhere around 25 to 35. It will be made up of representation from parents, from staff, administrators, and community members. We're hoping to identify folks that maybe have, multiple intersections along there. Also folks from historically marginalized groups as well to ensure that there's representation across our community. And then thinking about local experts in our community who understand facilities in ways that are more advanced than even we do to provide that extra perspective for us. So whether it's folks from the train company or other vendors that we work with in the area or construction companies, hopeful to find a range of expertise and interests to kind of work through some challenging issues and provide recommendations that we can act on.
Is that something the board will be invited to participate in as well?
Yep, the board will always be, can attend, anything that they desire. The one thing we would have a concern about would be, their goal is to, generate recommendations for us. And so we want to let them work to some extent, through the process themselves, and if we do have a anticipated quorum, we just need to post it. But sometimes with the committees, there is a board representative or various organizations that might be an opportunity to think about as we approach the spring. Does the board want a person, given the significant political nature of this, to just sit on and report back? That's certainly been a strategy used in the past.
Any other questions? And looking toward the options as far as motions, I'm thinking there's kind of a general consensus that it would be that the compliance is evidence there. Any comments on?
I don't have any concerns
Okay,
about the indicators that were presented.
It says no vote tonight.
right.
Oh.
Yep, no, I'm just saying for
oh,
next week.
Sorry. Yep, got
Just
it.
prepping, yep. Okay, moving on to the WASB convention report. You can see there a number, Katie and I were the ones board members who attended, as long with Dr. Engel and Mr. Lucky and Kurt Teff and Amy Zabrowski, and as well as Dr. Hersey. Opportunity to talk about some of the things that we've learned about. Ms. Berkebel, do you want to go ahead, start us out, or?
Sure. It was really interesting and worthwhile, so if anybody has an interest in going next year, I would highly recommend. I tended to choose workshops that were about the issues that we face. So I went to one about declining enrollments and the challenges of that, but I didn't read the fine print, and it was about rural communities, so it was a little bit different than what we're facing here, but similar issues. And learned that a lot of what we're facing here is the same across the state. I didn't realize that, and so it was fun to find community in other districts and personnel that are facing the same challenges that we are. I went to a session about how to have a successful referendum, and I talked a little bit about that at our last meeting. And one of the biggest takeaways there was how important it is for the community. In order for referendums to pass, the biggest thing that we need is for the community to have trust and faith in what we're doing, and I think we need to do whatever we can to build that up. Yeah, I don't know what else.
Sure.
I don't need to give a whole play-by-play of each session I went to, right? But we did get to go to, is it Vincent?
Vincent High School, yes.
Vincent High School, which is an agricultural high school
In the city.
in the city that's been there since the 70s.
Yeah, late 70s, yeah.
Yeah, and they have also, like, they had a miniature horse and
Chickens.
chickens and goats.
They're making some money selling eggs right now, so.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. And they gave us freeze-dried Skittles, and they were awesome. Not fruits and vegetables, but freeze-dried cookies. Yeah.
I was able to attend a number on strategic budgeting, financial planning, an outlook on the fiscal cliff that's coming up, kind of in preparation of the state biennium. Attended a session on school-based mental health framework that our own folks were able to present on, Kurt Teff and Ami Zabrowski.
I heard good things about that when I was in Milwaukee a
Oh.
couple weeks ago. Some of the school board members attended that and just recognized that the presenters were from, Ami was one from La Crosse. I said, well, I hope you went up and introduced yourself. They would be happy to share information. And they said they did. So I had heard good things about that session.
I've seen some version of that presentation probably 20 times now, but they always adapt it for the audience. And I was impressed how they made it relevant to school board members and administrators and actionable. You know, even though our situation may be different than others, they identified a very engaging way to make it relevant to others.
I think that given all the challenges that we and other school districts face, I always appreciate it when I hear from other districts who are like, we want to model the things that you're doing. It's always encouraging to hear as a school board member.
My hope is that every year we're able to present at WASB with some, practice that we've been engaged in here. We have lots to share, I think. So, I know Dr. Harsey, you attended as well. Did you have anything you wanted to highlight?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that's been interesting attending over the years is the standing room only breakout sessions, because it's an indicator of what's top of mind for school board members and superintendents around the state. A couple that I'll just mention that had just standing room only. There's a session on book challenges. Clearly, it's an indication of what school boards are sensing around, and they're talking about the trend towards more and more book challenges that districts were facing. Another one was by Bob Butler, WASB attorney, and then Tess O'Brien from Boardman and Clark around relevant laws associated with Title IX. And then, again, standing room only in some of these sessions. Probably no surprise that those were hot button topics. I will, too, kind of jump on the bandwagon. Kurt and Ami's session was exceptionally well done. And with Dr. Cooperstoll's point, it is validating to recognize the school district of La Crosse in many ways has efforts around, like, for example, our whole child framework, but many areas where other school districts are pining to have the resources and the approaches that the school district of La Crosse has. And then finally, I'll just end with, some of the keynotes were excellent. One of the things that one of the keynotes shared was how difficult it is. I'll reverse this. How easy it is to be a critic and a cynic and critical, and how difficult it is to be a leader in protection of our community's most valued resources, our children. And that keynote speaker happened to be Tom Thibodeau, again, right here in our area, but was just given accolades to those who are serving on school boards and recognizing how difficult it has been, whatever your circumstance around the state, but just saying thank you to school board members, recognizing that it's been a challenge to be in protection of children over the last several years. It was an excellent conference.
I'll add a couple of things. I too want to say it was wonderful to have Kurt and Amy represent the district for us at that convention, and I do hope that we can always have some kind of representation and program, because I think we are on the cutting edge of a lot of things in education. One session I went on was detailed new physical education curriculum, incorporating nutrition and activity. It wasn't like you go out and do jumping jacks and that's it anymore. It's a lot of creative things that they did, and they had a student, I can't remember what district they were from, but they were their middle school, elementary age students, and they were there on their day off, and they had to get up, and it was an in-service day from their district, and I think the enticement was they got to go to Hoo Hot after the event, but he had said he'd also done some nutritional things, and that the manager at Hoo Hot was going to be presenting some things to the students as well. So they were very energetic, and it was great to see some of the new things going on in the curriculum. And I also went to a session on air quality, talking about the studies that are showing how the impact air quality has on learning. And I thought some of those things were interesting, and I was going to talk with Mr. Lavina about some of those to see what our district is doing and how we're performing on that end. And then I mentioned the Vincent High School tour, where it was really interesting. I had no idea that there would be an agricultural emphasis school in the city. It was on the edge. City of Milwaukee kind of has a couple of jigs, and it kind of went out to the western suburbs practically. But it was very, very good, and very to see what they were doing. They also had a greenhouse and reptiles. There was this huge turtle walking around in the middle of the classroom, and so a lot of innovative things going on there, and especially talking about the education of children in a city district where a lot of them have no idea about farming or agriculture. And I think there were 8 different areas of agriculture that they could go. And they also talked about some of the things they were doing and how in solar and as well as sustainability, and how they changed the district. The Milwaukee Public Schools has modified a number of their parking lots to not just be parking lots, but also to be trees and have different kinds of sustainability efforts with it. So I thought there was a lot of good content in there as well. So I too thought it was a good conference. So any questions by anybody?
I have an informational packet if anyone wants to check it out on Vincent. They have about the same student body as Logan, I think.
Yeah, I think it was around 780 or so, they said. Next up, it kind of is dovetails into the convention. It's the WASB Delegate Assembly Report, and it actually is out already. And so I don't have to go through a lot of the changes. As you can see, there's a PDF attached to the agenda item that talked about the resolutions. And I knew it was going to be kind of a long afternoon when it took 45 minutes as to whether we should add that students should know about political or about voting in as one of the key. There was a lot of discussion about that, as to that it would be infiltrated by different politics and things like that. But we finally got through it, and I think that the challenges for especially newer people who are at the assembly to vote is that it's hard for a lot of people to get past that. This isn't what your district has to do. It's what WASB is going to be lobbying for if issues come up in front of the legislature. And it's a general agreement, but it's not a document that says any school district is required to do anything. So I think that's usually part of the challenge to get through some of the items. But if you have any questions on that, let me know. But again, I said it is attached there, so you can go through any of the, no big hot ticket items as far as that I thought, but a lot of good materials in there. Moving on to announcements. Ms. Bauman is at home attending to a sick child, so we don't have any updates on the foundation. For the Vice President, it's just a reminder that there's a middle school staff linkage with the Board of Education here at Hogan at 5 p.m. on February 20th. That's a Monday, if I remember right, I think, the day before the election, the primary election. Dr. Engel, announcements on your behalf.
Yes, this week, February 6th through 10th, is National School Counseling Week. Our school counselors provide a critical role in our schools in helping students through all facets of their life. Oftentimes, they are Swiss Army knives adapting to any challenge that's in front of them at the drop of a hat, and so incredibly thankful for all that they do and excited to recognize them. Next week is School Bus Driver Appreciation Week. They are a crucial resource in our school district and part of our partnership with Go Right Way and transporting kids to school every day. Kids need to be at school ready to learn, and the at school part is the most important one. Can't learn until we get there. And so thankful to bus drivers. It's been harder to recruit folks in recent years with some of the employment challenges and the rising wages for CDL licenses and other things with distribution networks in our area. And so thankful for all of our school bus drivers and the service they do to our students. And then I would just add that we are at the front end of the budgetary cycle, so pay attention to the legislature over the next 5 months. It kind of starts with the governor's State of the State address, and then he'll make his budget request to the legislature. They'll either accept it and modify it or develop their own here in the coming months. There'll be hearings in spring and early summer on the budget, and then the governor will hopefully sign something by around July 1. As it relates to students in the governor's State of the State address, he identified investments to improve reading and literacy outcomes and expand financial literacy curriculum as something to focus on. He is proposing a pathway to get experienced educators back into our workforce by making it easier for school districts to hire retired teachers and staff, and to invest over $20 million in recruiting, developing, and retaining teachers and student teachers. And then with the school mental health piece kind of being a theme, indicated he's going to make Kids Get Ahead a permanent state program and invest more than $270 million to ensure every student has access to mental health services. So kind of some early indications from the governor what his priorities are in the State of the State address, and then his budget request will be kind of a more formal document, and we can look through all of that to kind of see where that's at. If you have any interest in legislative advocacy or have any questions about that, happy to work with anyone who would like to.
Thank you, Dr. Engel. Next up is the agenda planning for our next February meeting on the 20th.
I'll make a motion to approve the February 20th, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections.
A second. Motion has been made and second. Motion has been made by Dr. Cooper-Stoll and seconded by Ms. Leahy to approve the February 20th, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All oppose? All abstain? The motion carries. Any board debriefing tonight? Comments?
Nice job, thanks for filling in.
Okay, once we adjourn, we will go to our workshop, and it's in downstairs.
Tech Room 1A.
Tech Room 1A. Meeting's adjourned.